In Renaissance Europe, failing to bleed on your wedding night could cost you your dowry, your marriage, even your safety. So, of course, someone offered a solution. A 17th century English translation of an Italian book called Magia Naturalis, Natural Magic, puts it like this: make little pills and lay them on the mouth of the matrix, the womb. It will lie here and there make little bladders, which being touched will bleed much blood that she can hardly be known from a maid. In case that wasn't clear, the pills were meant to create blisters inside the vagina, so they would rupture and bleed during sex. And this wasn't hidden away in a secret manuscript. This recipe was printed, translated, and sold across Europe in a popular book on natural magic. And that was just one method among many. In this video, I'll show you 4 methods mentioned in Magia Naturalis to make a woman a virgin again, including leech-induced scabs, dried pigeon's blood, and a paint made from boiled lead. Please don't ever try this at home, I beg you. Each one of these methods was designed to produce blood on command, whether there was any lost virginity to begin with or not. And the real question isn't how far women went, it's why they would ever have to in the first place. Hello, lovely history fans. I'm Dr. Julia Martins, this is Pancake, and I'm a historian of medicine and gender and sort of unofficial archivist of very questionable recipes. I've spent more time than is strictly advisable reading early modern instructions on how to restore your virginity, and allegedly it was for my PhD. And if you would like to support my work and help me make more history videos like this one, please consider joining my Patreon, where you will have access to bonus content, Q&As, and lots more. Now, today I want to show you how a Renaissance bestseller claimed to make you a maid again by morning, often with some truly alarming ingredients. This is a story about patriarchy, publishing, and very creative people in 3 parts. First, why virginity mattered so much. Second, how these recipes actually worked. And third, how this subject became so controversial that entire translations quietly erased it. Let's start with the problem these pills were trying to solve. Let's be clear, in the early modern period, virginity wasn't just a moral ideal. It was legal, financial, and deeply public. In England, church courts were flooded with testimonies accusing women of being spoiled, used, or not pure as she claimed. And in much of Europe, a woman's virginity was treated like a down payment on her dowry, proof that the goods hadn't been tampered with. A stable marriage, it appears, wasn't just sealed with a contract, it could demand the visual proof of bridal blood. Of course, that created a problem. Virginity isn't exactly a visible condition. It can be an elusive concept. Even if we're thinking about the hymen, which historically people believed could tear in all sorts of ways, horse riding, bicycles later, dancing, or just existing in a world with stairs. Or it could be surprisingly resistant and flexible. Plus, some girls are just born without one. Not all bodies are the same. Still, for Renaissance women, virginity was socially important. It concerned their social status, their family, and the community. Virginity could be seen as a guarantee that any children born after the wedding were legitimate. In his book, A Directory for Midwives, the medical writer Nicholas Culpeper stated, "Bleeding is an undoubted sign of virginity." In another book, the 4th book of Practical Physics, he went further. There is an alteration at first in virgins, which causes pain and bleeding, which is a sign of virginity. So, for many early modern men, there was little nuance. They wanted blood, on the wedding night, on the sheet. And if there wasn't any, well, that could trigger a financial dispute, a public shaming, or an annulment. In some cases, the woman's family might have to return the entire dowry. In others, the bride might be quietly sent back as damaged goods. This is what Renaissance people meant by a bad match. This went far beyond just sex. We're talking family honor, fortunes, the integrity of inheritance, and the undeniable legitimacy of heirs. And if a man really wanted to peek behind the curtain of a woman's past, he would look into the best-selling advice books of the age. Books like Alessio Piemontese's or Leonardo Fioravanti's Secreti. And they flew off the shelves, promising not just household remedies and marital peace, but also, more insidiously, the coveted tests to check if a woman was corrupted. Yes, people were buying self-help books to diagnose virginity, centuries before WebMD and somehow even less reliable. So, what did you do if you didn't bleed on your wedding night? This is where the pills made their agonizing entrance, a promise of blood, brewed from pain and poison, yet offering a strange path to social redemption. Up next, the Renaissance's most horrifying how-to guide. So, you're a Renaissance bride, not exactly a virgin, and your entire future may hinge on bleeding convincingly. Giambattista Della Porta has some ideas. His 1558 Magia Naturalis, translated into English in 1658, offers 4 methods. 4. Because nothing says "I've really thought about this" like an entire subsection on simulated defloration. Here's the first. A woman deflowered made a virgin again. Make little pills thus. Of burnt alum, mastic, with a little vitriol and orpiment. Make them into very fine powder that you can scarce feel them. When you have made them pills with rainwater, press them close with your fingers and let them dry, being pressed thin, and lay them on the mouth of the matrix, the womb, where it was first broken open. Apply, wait, change every 6 hours. And orpiment is arsenic sulfide, by the way, which is highly toxic. Then, it will lie here and there make little bladders, which being touched will bleed much blood that she can hardly be known from a maid. So, the goal was to create small controlled wounds that would rupture during sex, a performance of purity achieved through pain. Honestly, it's less a remedy than a stunt. Bleed on cue or else. And the second method? Midwives that take care of this do it another way. They contract the place with a decoction of the aforementioned things. Then they set a leech fast on upon the place, and so they make a crusty matter or scab, which being rubbed will bleed. Leeches, of course. Imagine the trust required, not just in the midwife, but in the timing for all this to work. Having said that, I have my doubts that midwives would actually do this. Here's the third method. Others, when they have straightened the part, inject the dried blood of a hare or pigeon, which being moistened by the moisture of the matrix, the womb, shows like live fresh blood. So the idea was simple. Insert the dried blood, let the body's moisture revive it, and hope it looked convincing. And finally, Della Porta's proudest contribution. I found out this noble way. I powder litharge very finely and boil it in vinegar till the vinegar be thick. I strain out that and put in more till that be colored also. Then I exhale the vinegar at an easy fire and resolve it into smoke. In other words, boil lead in vinegar until it becomes a thick reddish paste. Apply as needed. Dangerous? Certainly. Effective? I have my doubts. As for noble, only if you'd have a very warped idea of virtue. But taken together, the message is clear. Your honor is your blood, and if you can't provide the real thing, Della Porta will help you fake it, with arsenic, or leeches, or lead. Now, none of this was new in the 16th century. Trotta of Salerno, a medieval physician, had penned a recipe book with many ways of restoring lost virginity, too. Her work was widely read, and I think Della Porta was very familiar with her writing. Still, although one of her 9 methods did use leeches and another one even powdered glass, the other recipes were much less scary, using ingredients such as blackberry juice. But more on her on another video. What is clear is that in this culture, female honor was intimately bound to women's perceived purity. It is very likely that writers such as Della Porta took inspiration from Trotta's work. But was this some sort of cunning act of female agency? I mean, if you define agency as choosing your preferred method of painful deception, then maybe. But it's an agency exercised in service of inspection, a tactical submission to the gaze that demands proof. It's a way of surviving in a patriarchal world. Virginity restoration, perhaps unsurprisingly, has a long history, and recipes included everything from the ones I just mentioned to tightening formulas of all kinds and many other methods. And by the 16th century, these weren't secrets whispered in dark corners. They were published, translated, bought, and read. But next, how the same book told four very different stories across Europe. Now, you might be thinking, surely this recipe caused some controversy. You would be correct. And this wasn't even Della Porta's most infamous formula. That would be the witch's ointment, and I'll probably make a video about that too. I mean, who can resist talking about witchcraft, hallucinogenic formulas, aphrodisiacs, and flying off to orgies with the devil? I know I can't. As the name of the book indicates, Magia Naturalis was a book on natural magic, and the belief that nature was full of hidden forces that could be exploited and manipulated by humans to fulfill their goals. This was an area at the center of a big political and religious controversy in the 16th century, and natural magic could be perceived as dangerously close to demonic magic. Ways of faking virginity definitely didn't help. So, as you would expect, Della Porta's Magia Naturalis had barely landed in print before people started panicking, not just about the bleeding pills, but about the many secrets of women scattered throughout the book. Recipes to simulate virginity, abort pregnancies, seduce someone, avoid seduction, poison a man, or turn him into a leper. It was a one-stop shop for everything your local confessor would rather you didn't know. Still, this was a book written in Latin for educated readers, and most people wouldn't have been able to read it, even if they knew how to read in their local vernacular language. But this would soon change. The first vernacular translation, in this case Italian, printed in Venice in 1560, quietly deleted the virginity recipes, along with the love charms and anything involving poisons, wombs, or vaguely female agency. The witch's ointment was heavily censored too. The justification? That such things might be used by evil people to do evil things, which, to be fair, does describe most of these recipes quite efficiently. But let's be honest, the concern wasn't just about arsenic or alum. It was about access to knowledge, and a very sensitive kind of knowledge. Latin, the language of the original book, was for scholars, reasonable people with discernment. But this was a time when literacy was quickly spreading, especially in the Italian peninsula. And so, vernacular translations, on the other hand, meant that servants, wives, unmarried daughters, people who were meant to be read to, could have access to highly problematic information. The church was not impressed by the idea that the general public would be able to read for themselves about how to manufacture the all-important signs of maidenhood. Enter the Inquisition. After controversies surrounding recipes like the witch's flying ointment that I just mentioned, the magia was tainted. Not literally this time, just reputationally. By 1583, the book had been added to the Spanish Index Prohibitorum, the list of forbidden books. As for translators, they either purged it entirely or made editorial choices that, let's say, prioritized sales over scandal. Take France. In 1581, the French translation kept a recipe to test a woman's chastity using a magnet, which the husband should place underneath her pillow without her knowing. If she was a virgin on the wedding night, she would embrace her husband sweetly in her sleep. If not, she would be thrown away from the bed as if by a violent hand. Charming and puzzling. But despite that flair for spectacle, they cut the flying ointment from the translation. Apparently, bodily illusions were marketable, but flying witches, not so much. Meanwhile, in England and German areas, conveniently beyond the Pope's reach, things went the other way. The 1658 English edition restored the whole bloody recipe catalogue. So did the 1677 German version, translated by Christian Knorr von Hosenhoth, who even defended Della Porta by name. So, depending on where you were, Magia Naturalis was either a respectable natural philosophy text or a DIY guide to reproductive deception and much else. Same author, but not the same book. Depending on the language, Italian, French, English, or German, or Latin, you would find a completely different version, censored, sensationalized, restored, or quietly redacted. Even Della Porta himself, in the 1589 expanded version of the book, went ahead and censored his own text. He had faced the Inquisition twice, and he had definitely learned from the experience. Still, these Italian ways of restoring virginity caught the popular imagination. In a 1683 story called The London Jilt or The Politic Whore, Isn't that a great title? Anyway, a character even describes her days working as a prostitute, saying that she had sold her virginity the first time. And then she clarifies, "Be not amazed, O reader, that I say the first time, for I have lost it several times after the manner of Italy." Which leaves us with one final question. Why does this still matter? It would be easy to file all of this under weird things the Renaissance people did. But the truth is, these recipes and the fear that made them useful never really went away. What Della Porta's blistering pills reveal is a world obsessed with proof and performance, not of love, not of safety, but purity symbolized by blood. And if you couldn't bleed on cue, you could resort to improvising. Today, virginity still gets treated like evidence by some people, from online myths about testing purity with garlic to actual clinics offering hymen repair surgery. The obsession lingers. The core fear of female sexuality persists, simply repackaged for our times. We talk about progress, but there are still girls all around the world facing exams, accusations, even violence, all because someone believes virginity can and should be proven. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does recycle the bad ideas, especially the ones that blame women. So next time someone says the past was simpler, you can remind them, Renaissance bestsellers openly taught women to bleed on command because in their world, the price of failing that one bloody purity test was infinitely more terrifying than any poisonous recipe could be. What a scary thought that is. If you enjoyed this video, bleak as it was, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And do consider becoming a patron on Patreon. It really does help. Thank you and see you next time.